Hi everyone, this is Anson from AnsonAlex.com. In this video, I'm going to be presenting part 2 of my 4-part series on Google Drive for 2013. Part 1 of this series was an introduction to Google Drive and really just covered uploading files and how Google Drive can be used as an online storage utility. In this video of the series, I'm going to be talking about document creation inside of Google Drive. So this is really getting into the meat of Google Docs. As I explained in the first video, Google Drive is this big service that you can compose documents, but you can also store documents and files and really any type of file. In this video, I'm specifically going to be talking about creating files within Google Drive. Part 3 of this video series is going to talk about sharing documents and files in Google Drive, and Part 4 is going to talk about file management and organization in Google Drive. So I hope this tutorial helps and enjoy it. Okay, so here I am in my Google Drive, and as I mentioned in part 1 of this video series, I'm going to be working from this activity section throughout the entirety of this series. This used to be called the home section in the old version of Google Docs, and it's where I prefer to always start and end my work in Google Docs. So if you can't see this activity section, you might have to click on this more drop down on the left side of your screen, and then you'll be able to access activity. So I've got 4 files that I uploaded in the first video of this series, but in this video we're going to talk about document creation in Google Docs. So Google Docs serves as a fully functioning word processing suite, and it has almost all of the same features that Microsoft Office has. So to first get started, to create a document in Google Docs, all you need to do is click on the big red Create button on the left side of your screen. You'll notice a drop-down list appears, and you have a number of different options as to which type of file you'd like to create. So I'm quickly going to touch upon each one of these. Document is equivalent to Microsoft Word. That's just a regular text document. It could be a letter, it could be anything, a list of grocery items, whatever you want it to be. A presentation is equivalent to PowerPoint. A spreadsheet is equivalent to Microsoft Excel. A form is for creating surveys and questionnaires that other users can fill out. It's actually a very useful tool. And drawing is for creating diagrams and charts, like a flow chart or a system diagram, something to that. It's equivalent to Microsoft Visio if you've ever used that. And then a folder is obviously a folder. We're going to talk about folders in the 4th part of this series when we talk about file organization and management. So to get started, I'm just going to create a document. So when I click on document, first thing I want you to notice is that it opens in a new tab. So I still have access to my activity screen here within Google Drive. And in this new tab, I have an untitled document, and it looks kind of like the old school version of Microsoft Word. Now, I want to let you know right off the bat that Google Docs has an autosave feature. In fact, there isn't even a manual save feature in Google Docs anymore because the autosave feature works so quickly. However, this feature is going to start working as soon as I start typing in this document. So if I type here's a line of text, you'll notice at the top here it says saving, and after a few seconds it says all changes saved in Google Drive. So if we go back and take a look at our activity list, we'll see that we have an untitled document at the top of our list. Now this can create a problem because you can actually have documents with the same file name in Google Docs and in Google Drive. So what I recommend to all users is that the first thing you do when you create a new document, whether it's just a document or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or presentation as they call it in Google Docs, the first thing you want to do is title your document, or else you're going to have a list of a whole bunch of untitled documents in here, and it's going to become very confusing as to which one is the one you're looking for. So the first thing you want to do when you create a new document is go to the top left and just click on the name, and you can call it whatever you want. I'll just call this test document. I'm going to hit OK. You can see it says all changes saved in Google Drive. If I go back to my activity screen, we now see it's called test document. And like I said, there's no save button in Google Drive. So this document is saved. If I just close out the tab, you've seen me the whole time. I haven't hit save at all. I have this test document in my list. If I click on it to open it up, again, opens in a new tab. I've got my correct title, and I've got the line of text that I typed earlier too. This document is available anywhere in the world now, as long as I log in with my Google account, Or I could share this document with another Google Docs user and they could access it as well. We're going to talk about that in the third part of this video series. There are a few things that I want to show you within the actual word processing service here in Google Docs. So you can see you've got your formatting bar here at the top. It's got all your basic types of text formatting, so I can change the font, I can change font size, I can change bold, italics, underline, I can change the text color or the background color, I can insert links, I can insert comments. I can also insert comments by selecting part of my document, highlighting it, right-clicking, and choosing comment. I'll just add a comment. And you can see that when I do that, it appears on the right side of my document. This text that I highlighted remains highlighted, and you'll see if I click on the text, the comment pops out. If I were to click off the text and click on the comment, it's going to highlight the text. So it's kind of a useful tool if you're doing a lot of document collaboration here in Google Docs. You can change your alignment, center align, right align, so I could center this line of text. I can do bulleted lists, so I could make a grocery list, oops. I want to spell milk right. Milk and eggs, those are the two most common grocery items, right? So I could make that a numbered list so I could keep track of my grocery items. Pretty much everything that you can do in Microsoft Office, you can also do in Google Docs. Now there are a few other very important features I want to show you that are slightly different from Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office. The first one is if you want to make a copy of a document. And this can be very important in Google Docs because if somebody shares a document with you, and we're going to talk about this in the next video more in depth, they'll have the option of giving you either edit permissions or just view permissions. If you just have view permissions, you can't make any changes to that document. You can only view it. However, you could make a copy of that document and then make changes to your own version. So in Microsoft Office, that's called Save As. In Google Docs, they make it a little bit more simple. If I click on File, you'll see I have an option to make a copy. And this will make an exact copy of this document. Whether or not I have read or write access on this document, on the copy that I create, I will have permission to edit it because it's my own version of the document. Okay, there's also another very interesting feature I want to show you, and that is this revision history feature. Again, I'm in the File menu here in Google Docs. And this is very useful for two reasons. As I mentioned earlier, Google Docs has an autosave feature. So that means your document is constantly saving as you're working on it. So let's say you make an hour's worth of changes and all of a sudden you realize you don't want those changes. Well, it's been saving the whole time. You can't just close it out and reopen the document that you had before. What you can do is you can click on this See Revision History. You'll see over here is a list of all my revisions. At first glance, it looks like I only have one revision of this document. However, if I click on this Show More Detailed Revisions down here at the bottom, you'll notice I have 4 versions of this document. And something interesting that we can't see the full value of right this second, but you'll notice that in each one of these revisions, there's a name, which is me, Anson Alexander, and a color with my name. Now, whoever made changes on each one of these revisions is going to be listed here. So I've made changes on all 4 of these revisions, but if I was collaborating on this document and I had 10 users who were editing this document, for each revision listed over here on the right, it would tell you who made changes. So if I click on, say, my second revision, it says Anson Alexander made changes, and the text highlighted in green are the changes that I made. If 2 people had made changes to this particular revision, we would have two different colors associated with our names, and the changes that we specifically made would be in the color that is associated with our name. So you see if I go to the next revision, that doesn't really have any changes. And then the 4th revision, you can see the milk and eggs I added, and it was done by Anson Alexander. So that's just a cool little feature. So you can always revert back to an older version of a document. So I could go to one of these older versions and I could say restore this version. I can also track who made changes. So if you have a shared document where everybody has access to edit it and somebody decides to be malicious, you can hold them responsible for their changes. You can see what time they made their changes, what changes they made, and you can restore back to a version of the document before those changes were made. So Google's kind of covered all the bases here in terms of trying to protect our data and make sure that we can always go back to something we had previously. So that's a very useful feature of Google Docs. To close out revision history, I'm just going to hit the X here in the top right. And so now let's go ahead and let's talk about a different type of document here in Google Docs. I'm just going to close out this tab. Like I said, it's saved automatically, so I don't have to worry about saving. So now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to click on the big red Create button again. And this time I'm going to choose Presentation. You'll notice again it opens up in a new tab, and you'll see that it looks very similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. I get the option in the beginning to choose a theme, so I could choose kind of a cool wave theme, I guess, here. Click OK. You can see that there's a nice little tutorial over here on the right that kind of helps you get started with Google Presentation, but it's really very similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. I'm not going to go through this entire presentation aspect of Google Docs here, but you know, we can add a title. We could call this Google Drive 2013, and we could say by Anson Alexander. Now, I will be honest with you. I don't work for Google. I think if you watch all of my tutorials, not just my Google tutorials, you know that. And I don't think that Google Presentation is quite up to speed with PowerPoint. Okay, I've used Presentation a decent amount, enough to kind of get my hands dirty and see how it works. And there are just some things that you can't do in Presentation. There's some formatting errors. Sometimes text will wrap down to the next line and it just looks weird. So I tend to still like PowerPoint a little bit better than Presentation, but if you're trying to do just a simple presentation, this is a great way to do it. And the best thing about it is with PowerPoints, you're usually creating a PowerPoint to show somebody else. So what do you have to do? You have to create that PowerPoint. You have to either put it on a flash drive, or you have to email it to yourself, or you have to email it to the person you're going to show it to. With Google Drive and Presentation within Google Drive and Google Docs, you can just create your PowerPoint and then go to that person's location. On their computer, you can pull up your PowerPoint by logging into your Google account. So it's a great way to transfer your presentation someplace else. So you can see I've got my title slide here. I could go in and I could add a new slide. Just like in PowerPoint, I have the title and the text part. I have all my same formatting options that we talked about earlier: links, bold, italics. I can put in lists. I can change the fill color of say, the background of this text box. So you really have all the options. I can add some shapes over here, so I can add arrows and callouts and that sort of thing. So you can have a lot of fun with this. If you're a creative person, you can really make this very unique and customize it completely to your taste. Now, I forgot to do something when I first opened up this presentation that I mentioned earlier. I don't know if anybody caught on, but let me look at my activity screen here. Oh look, I have an untitled presentation. If I were to create another presentation, it would have the same name. So I need to go back in here and I need to give it a name. Remember, that's a very important aspect of Google Docs here. So I'll just call this test presentation. You can see, just like before, it says all changes saved. If I look at my activity list, there it is with the new name. So very asynchronous, very quick here in Google Docs. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to close out this tab. And now let's talk about a spreadsheet. I'm going to click on the Create button. This time I'm going to go to Spreadsheet. Again, it's going to open up in a new tab. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to give it a title. That was very fresh in our minds right there, so it was a little easier. But you'll get used to that as you work with Google Docs, because you're not going to want to have those untitled spreadsheets and untitled documents pile up. So we'll just call this Test Spreadsheet. Now, I'm not going to go entirely through Google Spreadsheet here, but I will say that it has almost all the same features that Microsoft Excel has. You can do all the charts and graphs and all of that sort of thing here in Google Spreadsheet. I use spreadsheet systems a lot, both Excel and Google Spreadsheet. I use Google Spreadsheet more now because it does everything I need it to do, but I don't get into the graphs and charts too much. I'm not going to show you that today, but I will show you how to do some simple formulas, because that's mainly the thing you're going to be doing in a spreadsheet program. Usually the two primary functions of a spreadsheet program that I use are formulas, getting an average, getting a sum, and then doing some sorting, being able to sort some lists. So let's quickly talk about those two aspects. So I'm just going to put in some random numbers here. Doesn't matter what they are. Just want to do a couple of formulas on these numbers. And 3. So let's say I want to get the sum of these numbers. It's almost the same as Excel. So let me just give a label to one of my cells here. And then I'm just going to select the cell where I want my answer to go. I'm going to go over here to the Functions menu. It's the same symbol as it is in Excel. And I'm going to choose Sum. And then I'm going to highlight all of my data and click Enter. You can see there is the sum of my data. If you like doing it manually in Excel, you can do it in Google Docs manually too. I could click in the cell where I want my sum to go, and I could say equals sum, open bracket, select my data, and hit enter, and I get the same sum. If I change one of these numbers, my sum changes respectively. Okay, same with average. If we quickly do an average here, I'm going to go to the cell where I want my average to go to the functions menu, choose average, select my data, and hit enter, and I've got the average of my data. Now, just like in Excel, you can have different data types here in Google Spreadsheet. So I can have currency, percentages, and if I click on this 1, 2, 3 drop down, you'll see I get a number of different types of data. I can do scientific notation, I can do decimals, I can do different types of currency. If you look under more currency, they've got a whole list of different types of currency. I can do time, so this is very useful if you're doing a sort of time sheet, or if you're calculating how much time you spend on a project. You can add and subtract hours, which if you've ever tried to do without having a time data type is very, very difficult, because there aren't 100 minutes in an hour like it seems like there should be. There's only 60, so doing the math on that gets crazy. But when you have a time data type, it gets a lot easier. So that's definitely very helpful. So if I just change these numbers here into currency, you'll see that they are formatted respectively. Okay, now let's quickly talk about sorting a list. So I'm just going to put a list of states here together in the United States. Let's do the 2 states that I've lived in the most, and I was actually born in Virginia, if anybody's curious. So I've got those 3 states, and then I'll just put some other states that I've spent some time in here. Big Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots fan, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. So 5 states is good enough for me. So if I want to sort this list, let's say I want to sort it alphabetically, just like in Excel, I'm going to highlight my entire list, and I'm going to go up here to data, and you'll notice that these first 4 options are quick sorts, and actually to sort this list alphabetically, I could do option 1, sort column E, A to Z, but generally speaking, most of the time, the sort that you're trying to do is not going to be solved by doing a quick sort. So instead, you're going to go to the manual sort, which is sort range. You get this little pop-up. You can move this pop-up anywhere because it always happens to fall right on top of your data. It's just Murphy's Law. But you can see, does my data have a header row? In this case, it doesn't. That would be if I had put states at the top. So you see if I hit this checkbox, it's going to think that Florida is my header row, and it's not. That's one of my actual pieces of data. So I don't have a header row, and I do want to sort A to Z. I don't need to change either of these options here. You can see I can do nested sorts. So I know that can be confusing to some people. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but if you know how to do nested sorts in Excel, you can do it in Google Docs. So don't worry about that for now if you don't know what nested sorts are. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the sort button, and you'll see that my list of states is now in alphabetical order, starting with F and ending with V. So that's how you can do sorts in Google Spreadsheet. If you like to do borders, you can add borders. You can make your spreadsheets look real nice. You can change the background color. So you know, sometimes you do different colored grays depending on the field within a spreadsheet. It makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more readable. So you can do all of that here in Google Spreadsheet. I can have multiple sheets in my document, so I could add a second sheet. I can do calculations between sheets just like I can in Microsoft Excel. I could rename this sheet, so I could call this, you know, calculations, and then I could have a, you know, another sheet that has something else. So almost everything that you have in Microsoft Excel, you also have in Google Spreadsheet. I just want to take a look at this revision history real quick because it works really great in the spreadsheet, because it's going to have a revision for every single piece of data I've entered. So you'll see how many revisions we actually have just in a few minutes since we've been working on this document. So if I click on See Revision History, you'll notice at first it looks like I have 4 revisions, but if I click on See More Detailed Revisions, you'll notice within 8:38 to within 5 minutes, I've got probably over 20 revisions of this one document. So it's a very, very powerful feature. Okay, so now I'm just going to close out this spreadsheet document, and I'm going to go back to my activity list. You'll see that my test spreadsheet is now saved. All 3 of the documents we've created so far are saved and accessible anywhere in the world. It's one of the most beautiful things of Google Docs. So now let's go ahead and let's hit the big red Create button again. This time I'm going to choose Form. I'm actually not going to go into much detail at all with the forms because I have a tutorial specifically dedicated to forms, which I will put in the description of this video. It really needs its own video because it's not complicated per se, but it's definitely very new and there's a lot of different options. But I do want to show you that it's basically a way to create surveys. So I could call this form whatever I want. I'll call this test form to go with the same format we've been doing. And then I could put a question here, so I could say, you know, what is your name? And then under here, under question type, I have the option of choosing the type of question. So what is your name? That's probably going to be a text-based question, unless I have a list of 5 names. And if it's not one of those, they choose other, which wouldn't really make much sense. But you can see I can do multiple choice. I can do check boxes. I can do drop-down lists, scales, and grids. And like I said, I do go into detail on this in my Google Forms tutorial. So definitely take a look at that. You can do a lot of stuff with these forms. You can make it so depending on the answer to this question, the next question is either X or Y, depending on what they answer to the first question. So you can kind of guide the user throughout your survey. Definitely very useful. You can make these public or you can make them private. So definitely check out my tutorial on that. The forms is a very useful feature that I have used a good amount in Google Docs. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to, in forms, you do actually have to hit save for your changes to save. And then I'm going to close that out, and you'll see I have my test form here as well. And actually, one more thing to show you, we were just looking at the form creation. If I click on this form now, it's going to open up in a spreadsheet, okay? And that's because this is the view I'm going to see when people answer my form. So if people type in their name, it's going to give me the time that they filled out the form, and their answers are going to go into this spreadsheet so I can see everybody's answers at one glance. And then if I actually want to edit my form, I can click on the form menu and click edit form. It takes me back to that same screen we saw before. But again, I go into a lot more detail in the video specifically dedicated to Google Forms. So I'm going to close out this tab, and we're going to take a look at our last type of document. I'm going to hit the create button, and we're just going to open up a drawing. Again, opens up in a new tab. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a name. We'll just call this test drawing. You can see just like in the presentation part of Google Docs, we have a little tutorial that can help us out over here on the right. But this works very similar to Microsoft Visio. There aren't a lot of options. It's not that this gets very complicated, but you'll see the main thing you're going to be doing in a drawing program is you're going to be adding different shapes. So I could add a square. Maybe I'll add 2 squares here, and maybe these squares, you know, this could be anything. This could be any type of flowchart. But let's say these squares are connected, so I'm going to connect them via an arrow, and then I could call this, I could go to my text form here, and I could call this activity A, and then this one, if I go back to my text box, this could be activity B, so you can see activity A then leads to activity B. And you can do whatever you want with this. I've done seating charts using Google Drawing, you know, a chart of a whole part of a building with each person's desk in it and stuff like that. And as they move, I can just move these squares around. You can see if I move this, oh, that's actually the text box. If I move this square around, the arrow moves with it. I could, you know, select both of these by using the Apple key or the Control key. I could select both my text box and my title, and they would move together. So a very useful program depending on what you're using Google Docs for, but it's definitely something I have used, and you will find some use for it. So this is document creation in Google Docs, Google Drive. Remember, your documents are saved automatically. In the next video in this series, I'm going to talk about sharing documents with both other Google Docs users and with people who don't use Google Docs, so Microsoft Office users. We can convert to and from Microsoft Office very easily here in Google Docs. And then in part 4 of this video series, I'm actually going to talk about file organization and management. So I'm going to talk about creating some folders, putting these documents in some locations where they're easier to find later on, how to organize our activity list a little bit. So that should really help you once you start building up some documents here in Google Drive. So I hope this tutorial helped, and I'll see you next time. This is Anson from AnsonAlex.com.